Maybe. Okay, we're live there. Okay. Any minute now we'll be okay. I think we're live. Oh, pretend like we are and say hi to everyone.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Political Head Trauma Friday night after Christmas and the holiday. It is December 27th, year of our Lord, 2024. We are in the last week of 2024.
It's
and
heavy.
2025 cannot come fast enough, I would say.
As long as it's better.
Yeah. Remember 2020?
Oh,
We thought that was a horrible year. Did we ever believe that it would go on for 4 years? Just
yeah.
Amazing. So I'm Holly. This is Jared. If it's your first time watching, just find us on Political Head Trauma on Facebook. Please like our page and get notifications for when we go live every Friday from 6 to 8. And we talk to interesting people and electeds and people who want to be electeds, as well as actually anybody that we think is interesting and we'd like to share with you. You'll find us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Rumble. And thanks to KMMU, our partner in crime here, they help get the word out, and we're very grateful to have them. So please check out Main Street Media.
Yes. Anyway, so we are tonight. We've got a guest coming on in about an hour. She's kind of been a political operative for the Republican Party, and I want to ask her what she thinks the future of kind of where the Republican Party's going, where it's heading, what changes it's making. Because let's face it, Donald Trump made a change to the Republican Party, 100%. And it seems to have stuck. And I think with this last change and his resounding win, it's probably sent a message politically, and it seems like it's brought back in. It's brought back in like some of the people that's been away from the Republican Party for a while, like the libertarianish tech people are
and the youth.
There's a lot of
youth. We're seeing a lot of young people where they're kind of seeing him and let's be honest, Donald Trump right now is the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Which any Republican president does represent our party. And, but he has changed the focus from our party. And I've seen it within our state party that our delegates, a lot of them don't like him, wouldn't want him to marry their daughter or, anything like that. But they understand that he just might be what we need to upset this apple cart, which is politics in America, because we can't go the way we were going. It's not sustainable. And who's to say that even Trump could bring us back from the brink? I'm sure hopeful that he will. I'm hopeful that other, people in the Senate and the House the Supreme Court, I hope that the leadership in this country will think very, very hardly about and carefully about how to right this ship, because they are the problem. And like the Tea Party before them, people got upset, and that happened under Obama. People got upset, and they were actually recognizing the problem was in our government, and then it kind of fell off. And I think those people are certainly back.
Well, they got kind of usurped. The Republican Party then kind of, the ones that you got, Thomas Massey won, Rand Paul, they kind of became the Freedom Caucus, but a lot of them, I don't want to say they got usurped on the whole, but they got diluted with Dan Crenshaw came in about that time.
Yeah.
And whether you like him or not, Dan Crenshaw is not a liberty Republican. He's not a freedom Republican.
He's not a conservative.
Well,
He's not.
Yeah,
but he sold himself as one in his campaign.
Well, he's a war hawk. I mean, yes. Our guest is messaged. She's excited to join us in a bit. But so what I want to ask her about is what change do we have going on in the Republican Party? And I'm also reaching out to Katie Adams Anderton to come on again. She is a Democrat Utah County chair. And I want to ask her what changes she sees coming out of the Democrats. As we know, the Democrats, they had a bit of an upset.
Yeah, but they did have a win too. I mean, they didn't lose as bad as they should have.
Well,
they kept a lot of their seats.
Not one county. Well, okay, I should say it like this. Every county in the U.S. lost support for Democrats.
As
not
they
one
should.
County gained.
But they maintained their seats in California, gave them the win in the House. We should have had a lot larger margin.
Yeah, obviously.
For this mandate. He won the popular vote, which should have, Democrats should really be thinking this through and considering. And I'm hopeful, but I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm hopeful they will look to the American people and realize that they too probably need to change some things, and going through the woke ways is not going to help them. I had somebody accuse me of being woke and politically woke and a moderate Republican on the SEC. Now, considering the source, I laugh because he's ridiculous, but I've never been accused of being woke and moderate on the SEC. If anything, I'm far more conservative than most, because I always think freedom first. Freedom first. And are we taking freedoms? Are we giving freedoms? Do we really believe in a republic or do we not? Because though I love working with delegates, because these are people who really get engaged and listen and work and do the work, and they show up at this long convention that can go on for hours and hours and hours, the entire morning till the entire night. And they are committed to their neighbors. There is a more conservative leaning feel amongst these delegates that I am very, very comfortable with and being with and working with delegates. But a lot of people don't see the other side, and that is the neighbor that doesn't view things as conservatively as you do. The neighbor that does want programs to help people, and he does, the neighbor that isn't all in on Trump, but can't stand the Democrat path that they're on. So they will begrudgingly vote for a governor they may not love, but it's better than the alternative. And they're not prepared to go after a governor that is showing a very successful state on paper. The state is doing very, very well. This person absolutely hates the governor. And now I'm deemed a moderate in our SEC because I am not calling for his head. And that's the thing. I believe that we don't wreck things that are not broken. And if there needs to be something fixed, then the people need to make a stand and get it fixed. A governor is not going to go against the people who are standing up and saying what they want and what they don't. But he can't read people's minds. And if we continue to elect the same people to make the same rules, then what change will we get? What change are we asking for? We're asking for more of the same. But when people gather and make a big deal out of something that matters, well, I saw the governor change his position. Just on Trump, for example. The governor was an ever-Trumper. And now he's not. And I don't think that he wants any of his children to be like Trump or marry into Trump's family or anything like that, but he sees the importance and the value of what Trump brings to the table. And at least, to me, that matters. If you have
Well,
ears that are listening, you should be talking, not screaming, and certainly not begrudging people.
I just like how, and this isn't to disparage anyone. I like how, well, this happens every time when you start. There's a lot of things, if you study history, these are these signs of cultural issues that we have. That's where you start having this political polarism that is where either side is unrecognizable to the other,
Right.
because everything feels so
Okay, we're going to get
like you're in so
blasted
much.
here because my son is doing the same thing you're doing right now.
Is he doing to this all the same places?
I mean, usually I got a list this long.
All the same, but I mean, it happens every time. You got, the Reds and the Blues in Byzantine Rome or Justinian Rome. It happens every time, and that's where we are right now. I know he doesn't have the same places as me.
Okay. So I just got an alert that Kira Berklin is retired. Kira is a congresswoman. She's phenomenal. She came in, I worked with her in the party early on when she was the vice chair of our party. And she is such an amazing lawmaker. She just announced an hour ago, and so Facebook is just all up in arms. She's one of the good ones. She actually led the fight on women in sports. Kira comes from a very sporty background. She's a referee. She's got children, girls and boys, but she just jumped into a spot and the people love her. And she's one of those electeds that you can go to and bring up a case with her that you disagree, just like how we met with Sandal last time. And we talked about, the vape situation.
Mm-hmm.
You could go to Kira and talk to her, and they even did in Summit County regarding that development that we discussed early on. And though she'd voted a different way, she listened to the people and changed the vote and changed a lot of things. Like, she's a person that could admit when she was wrong. And again, she's somebody that ears are open. She wants to hear from people. And like Nicolene, like Tim, like Bridger, these folks don't just go in there having all the answers. They need us to tell them what we want. And they're people that are listening. And she's one of them. She was one of those that was listening. And man, she is an amazing woman. And I think that this announcement is just heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. I hope.
Well, it's heartbreaking that
okay.
she has a family medical emergency. Well, I just want to point
I
that.
don't know if it's medical.
Or health or
it's
whatever.
family, and I'm praying for her and wish her all the best. And
yes, we do. We wish we would have got her on, and we still might if we can, if she's got time and the capability to come on, talk about her time in. This is another point to make about why you should, regardless of whether you like your politician or not, you should take the time to reach out to them, to get to know them, make yourself available. This is my first time making myself available to politicians since I've started this. I've been a mushroom forever, but you should, because a politician is only going to vote on what people tell her. And
politicians should only vote on what people
or what they, and so if you don't, and if you're available and you can say, hey, look, this is coming up and here's my thoughts on it, that might help out with their decision making. And them coming around, or at least give them another opportunity to rethink what's going on. But so Frances is here. We're just gonna, without further ado, we'll bring her on.
Early.
Yeah. Well, okay, hold on. She's
Frances
back.
is early.
She's there. She's back.
Okay,
Okay.
we'll give it some time because she's early.
We'll give her just a minute. But I just want to know what she thinks about the future of the Republican Party, where she thinks the Republican Party's heading. I also want to know where the Democrat Party's heading. I want to know, is there changes in the future? Everyone who's watched this more than once knows that I am rather hard on the libertarian side. I am not a Republican. The Republicans traditionally have let me down. They have let me down as bad or worse than the Democrats have. And
I've been there.
And so, but I am a believer that if you really want to change it, you should join it to change it. I still haven't done that, but I am a believer of that. I do think that the base message of the Republican Party is a better message, even though the Republicans always fail to live up to it. If the Republican Party was a statin, you would have high blood pressure and high cholesterol. But it would say you'll have low blood pressure, no cholesterol.
What got me involved? Mostly, I got involved during Obama's years. And I was just a person who voted and all of that. And I became a delegate. And from there, I just took off. But I find that I was so disappointed in my party in 2017 when Trump took office, because half of our party was voting against him at every turn. And that is, just John McCain, who will ever forget, leaves his deathbed to go vote when they were ending Obamacare.
See, I'm not
something that people wanted, and that's what he ran on.
I'm not against party people voting against a president from the same party. I'm not against that. What I would be against is, John McCain came in with 100% idea of what John McCain wanted. He wanted more war. Honestly, I think John McCain thought that, like the Muslims think you get 72 virgins in heaven, I think he thinks he got to bathe in bathtubs of blood in heaven when he dies if he got to kill enough people through legislation.
I think that John McCain was the part of the swamp. And I think that
100%.
The very, very fact that Trump was there to drain that swamp put a lot of Republicans in a target that was well deserved. We got to see people for who they were. And we got to realize there is a deep state. There is a shadow government that operates our government. That makes me sound crazy to some people, but I think that what we've seen happen, they're telling you to your face, this is not happening. This is not real. This is not, happening. And yet you're like, it's right there. I can see it. This doesn't make sense. I can't get this to make sense. And you are supposed to work for me. I am your employer. And yet you're treating us like we're idiots, or that we can't handle the truth, or whatever it is. And so it's crushing and crumbling. And back then I was so upset that I was like, I'm going to do more. And then I ran for party chair that year. And then I've been that ever since. The thing is, I'm very hopeful. Hi, Mom. I'm very hopeful this time around is different. I'm hopeful that he has the support of the mandate that was given to him by the United States voter, and that both the House and the Senate will work for him and will do for him what the people of the United States require. And let us be proven wrong that no wars and protecting America first and watching our borders and getting our economy in order. Let's be proven wrong if that's what they're trying to do. And you want to make Trump look bad, give him everything he asked for. But I have a feeling that it's only going to be successful for us. Now, I know it's early. We weren't supposed to have Frances on until 7. She's in Florida, so time. Everything's probably relaxed there.
Well, and she's probably looking at I mean, she had to Google Mountain Standard Time and nervous about that. And I just want to say I'm thankful that she jumped ahead early. I like it when people are early and not late. I'm an old military guy. 15 minutes early is on time. Hi,
Hi
friend.
there.
Hi, Francis.
So you did say I'm in Florida. I'm actually in Georgia. So I'm on the Georgia-South Carolina border in Augusta, but close enough.
Oh, you're in Augusta now. Okay. Okay. So you're there, Augusta. So you're inland a little bit. I used to go visit Savannah all the time and Hilton Head and all that area. And
So
absolutely love it there. It's one of my
When-
favorite
when-
places on earth.
just to get started, Francis, I've looked into you and I'm just amazed at your resume. So you're in the pageant world. So you have a lot of pageant titles in Miss USA. And I was in the pageant world at a much smaller degree. I ran a pageant here in the Miss Tooele County for the Miss America pageant. But you've been Miss Georgia USA, Miss Mission USA. I mean, there's such, and then we get into you're a commentator, you're a journalist, you're a mom, a woman of faith, you're a blogger, you're daily caller, you're a freelance reporter. Like, your resume is so impressive. I don't even know how to share it with the people. So do you have like an elevator resume you could share with everyone so they get to know you a bit before we start?
Okay, so let's start with this. I grew up in the Salt Lake City area, and I worked in local politics there. I was the chairwoman of college Republicans at the University of Utah. Then I had opportunities interning at conservative organizations in DC, such as the Heritage Foundation, and that kind of just led me to this whole career path working in public policy and media. And I've always kind of dabbled between both because I love telling the stories of the American people, but I love impacting policy, whether that's at the state level or the federal level. And that's what I've been doing for a while. And I've been a guest on several different shows for on OAN, One American News Network, Fox News Radio. Then I'm a freelance reporter for the Daily Caller, then Herzog Foundation's The Line, which is an education outlet. And of course, yes, I'm a mom. I do pageantry. I have my husband who's military, so I do relate to you about being early. And being early is on time. So I kind of do everything. And I also lived and worked in Washington, D.C. for a while. But, we kind of have our roots down here in Georgia because my family, we love it here.
Oh, Georgia's one of my favorite places. I mean, fishing on Jekyll Island. I know evil was done there, but when I was there, good was done, and I caught those fish.
That's a really good story. Thank you.
Do you know what was done on Jekyll Island, Holly?
Yeah. Isn't that Dr. Jekyll story?
No.
Is that where they do the tests and the?
Nope.
Okay, look,
That's
I
where
want to
they
get
did
to
the.
Francis
That's
here.
where they did the Federal Reserve Act.
Oh, bless their hearts.
So
Well,
that's where the root of us being robbed comes from.
I'm so excited to talk to you because you are living like 5 different lives. And that's exceptional because you're so young and you've got all this energy. And yet you, like me, probably find yourself sometimes just wanting to bang your head into a wall because politics is not for the weak-hearted, right? It is something that to move a lot of people and to be a voice for a lot of people is really difficult because you're either hated or you're loved or a little bit of both. You could be the enemy. You could also be the voice of reason in a lot of different situations. And so I would love to hear about what you think politically is happening right now in the United States, especially after our election in November.
Just looking at it, I honestly wasn't surprised that Trump won. But what surprised me was that we won every single swing state. I
Right.
just think that the people are tired of what is going on with our country. They're tired of not being able to afford their groceries. They are worried about public safety, and they are worried about, like, if their kids go to school, about the ideologies that their kids are being taught. And those are all bipartisan issues. And the media will try to make it very partisan, but the reality is every single American cares about these issues and wants the best for their families as well as everyone in this country, because they're feeling this is not the country I know. I want to go back to the country that I know.
Or the country that was promised.
Hmm.
Just the opportunity to the opportunity. I'm an older person. I know you ladies are young, but I want my child to live a better life than I lived. And that's not a possibility for him. Not right now, not in this economy, and not with this government and this regulatory state that's restricted growth in the US and forced growth overseas. Not with all that. And I want that. I want my son to have a better life than I had.
Every parent does. And I'll tell you, with you being married to a veteran and you being a veteran, my father was a veteran, they don't go to fight because they just, not all of them, but they don't go to fight because they're looking to rebuild this nation in 5 years. They go there under the guise of, we are going to bring freedom, or we're going to protect home without fighting at home. And so this country you're promised, the country you fight for, it's an ideology now. We look at it and go, well, we wish it was this way or this way, because the reality is so different. And I think, yes, there was a mandate set in November by the American people. He won the popular vote, which was the goal of the campaign, because then it would shut everybody up. They couldn't say it was a stolen election or whatever. But there's so many Americans that were just fed up. And they want that same country back. They do want their kids to have it better than they had. That's what our parents wanted for us. And what have we lost? And what can we do now?
I would also say that it's about the political establishment. I think everybody in this country is tired of the political establishment in Washington, D.C. As someone who used to live and work in Washington, D.C., the political establishment on both sides was so rampant. You could hardly get any work done. And people say, oh, but we're trying to do bipartisan work as much as possible. It's like, yes, you can stand up for what you believe, but you can also still work with others. But at the same time, there were things that were being pushed, like the mass spending bills that were being discussed over the last few weeks, where everyone was fighting over that. It's like, this is proof that we have a political establishment in our country. And no matter what side, it looks like both parties want some kind of government spending of some sort. And that's something, hopefully come January, we see a lot more change in that. Of course, it's going to be a long process. It's not going to be done in the next 4 years. I think we can do a lot in the next 4 years, but this new movement, America First, is going to be very long. Like, we need to keep it coming, keep a lot of people coming to run for office and continue that trend going forward.
I agree.
So if we can you want to go on a time trip with me? Let's go back a couple months, and I want to hear what you think was that caused not just a surge forward in the Republican side, but caused the Democrat side to lose a lot of their constituency.
Well, look what happened back in, it was July when Trump was shot. And I even think it was before then, during the Biden and Trump debate here in Georgia.
I agree.
And people were realizing that it's like, oh, Biden is not competent to run this country. And obviously he was shoved out, and Kamala Harris ended up officially replacing him. And, a lot of people were concerned about that. Even the Democratic Party, some people in the Democratic Party, it looks like she was just elevated to the top instead of having any kind of real way to get there. And she was just nominated because, oh, she was the next person in line. And a lot of Democrats saw issue in that. But then the next step was when Trump was shot, and how the media started to perceive that. We saw headlines like, oh, he was shot, and some people were obsessed. We're starting to show obsession with him. It's like, well, if Trump is basically shot, that's basically a shot towards us, because we obviously saw that firefighter end up getting killed, and that shot was kind of like shooting us, because Trump, as Trump said, is like, I am just in the way of you guys, because Trump was kind of like our protector. And I don't worship Donald Trump, but in a way, he is kind of that person who is in the front on the front lines trying to protect us so the establishment doesn't come towards and go against us.
Yeah, well, I mean, 100%. And it wasn't just that. The media came out the next day and said it sounded like a gunshot. No proof it was a gunshot. And they said all that stuff
It was
immediately.
shrapnel.
And then after it was proven, them and also who was it? The head of the CIA came out and said it was shrapnel. He was hit
Yeah.
with shrapnel.
He was shot in the head.
Shrapnel from
He
what?
was shot in the
Break
head.
it down. But do you think, and this is I'm wondering, and this is a big wonder for me, is do you think that, and this is my biggest hope, I'm praying that you have the correct answer here, but do you think that the American people are finally tired of the woke nonsense, and that's what drove some of the people over?
Look at what all these colleges are doing, getting rid of their DEI nonsense in their schools. And I'm thinking they were just pressured. I also think they were pressured to do that, but they also wanted to go with the norms, go with the flow of this country. But after Trump won, we just saw all this change in the country where all these DEI initiatives in the schools were disappearing, all these kind of partnerships with these woke companies and groups. Everyone was waking up. People were tired of that political establishment on every side of the aisle. I mean, Elon Musk jumped on the Trump train. Vivek Ramaswamy jumped on the Trump train. Tulsi Gabbard, all these people.
RFK.
RFK, exactly. There are a lot of these people who are former Democrats or more to the center. I mean, Vivek, I think he used to vote Democrat too. I can't remember. I know
He voted Democrat for Obama, but he was registered libertarian through most of his life.
Elon was. He was the Democrat
He was
guy. Loved him. They loved him.
He was tech establishment.
He decided to make Twitter a free speech thing. Are you hearing in your ear this little clicking sound? Is it just me? I thought it was you turning. Do you hear it?
I do not.
I don't either.
I can
I
hear
don't know.
it like a
and
clicking sound.
It might be a disturbance coming from the internet talking all the way to Georgia.
From the force, if you will.
So yeah, that's the thing. I mean, let's face it, everyone, Elon Musk is the most important human being on earth right now. Love him or hate him, he is. If humanity leaves the earth in the next 100 years and populates the stars, it'll be because of Elon Musk. If Greta Thunberg has to shut up because we've gone electric, it's because of Elon Musk. You know, he's the innovator of our lifetime. And I know any Democrats out there, you hate him and he's awful and horrible, and Republicans out there hate the Tesla, but he's moving humanity forward, right or wrong. And yes, some of it's awful. I mean, we're probably going to end up with robots in our brains, and it'll probably be because of innovations he has, but
at least somebody's trying. So at least somebody's innovating. Remember, you go back 50 years, new inventions constantly. People were coming up with all this new ideas, and technology just started to advance, and all of that. We were the dreamers and the doers. And now red tape has people so confined to what they can do because the government has put the kibosh on so much, and it's hurt businesses, it's hurt inventors, and it's someone like Elon Musk has to come up and go, you know what? I don't care what you threaten to take away from me. I'm going to do it. And you know what? You don't like Twitter. Why don't you buy it? Well, in your face, I'll pay too much for it. I'll make it a free speech zone, and I'll put the president of the United States back on Twitter because, oh, and by the way, I'm going to release the behind the scenes footage of the CIA, FBI interfering with our business and our ability to do our business. Oh, and they did it to Facebook and they did it to Google. And all of this has been a sham to the American people. The information is so key. Data now is the number one thing that you can buy and sell in the world that is worth anything anymore.
I would even say that this new movement of America First brought in a lot of tech people because of Elon Musk. And Elon Musk, as we say, he's done a lot of good to bring back that free speech. And you see those mix of libertarians, conservatives, and populists all of a sudden come together and be excited about this new wave of free speech. And I'd even say that Elon Musk brought kind of a new whole side of the media in general. I mean, we already have people starting podcasts and a lot of different media outlets, but I think he started something new. You have Tucker Carlson, for example, who has his show on Twitter, and people are doing all these different little spaces on Twitter. So I think that whole podcast culture and him bringing back that free speech to Twitter has allowed for this new revolution of media to come around.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, it's an interesting time, and you know what? I mean, free speech was, for all intents and purposes, dead on the internet until Elon Musk bought Twitter. And for that, First Amendment's my benchmark. And for that, he's a personal hero of mine.
Well, he's got a lot of power, and he could be dangerous too.
Sure.
And that's something that we can't worship anyone. Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior. I just say that first. But I say that, there's worship now that's coming out for Trump. There's worship that comes out for Elon. And it makes, when people get to that stage, the left was kind of worshiping him on his electric car idea, because he didn't just make an electric car. He made the fastest car, luxury, everything. And then one that will drive itself. He was innovating, and he was doing it environmentally sound way and dreaming to the stars to change where Americans would have, where citizens of the world could live finally if we lost this planet. Now, though, a lot of us back then were like, oh, geez, I'm not driving an electric car. Then they drove a Tesla, and they were like, holy crap, this is amazing. People could get on board with it. But now it's like, what is he going to do next? And then he says he's going to put an implant in people's brains, and it could cause them to start walking if they couldn't before, or have diagnosed illnesses that they couldn't before. But at the same time, there's that freedom again. Is it ever going to be impeded upon? Am I always going to have the option not to put a chip in my brain? And that's why I try never to get too worshipy about human beings. But in our time, he's the guy. And to get behind Trump, it was a necessity, I think, for Trump to win this. RFK as well. People who like both sides, who can see the potential in both sides. We all want clean air and water. We all want our children to grow up better than we did. We don't want people to go hungry. We don't want big pharma advertising to us every second and making us sicker and the food sicker. Of course not. Republicans don't want that. We didn't want the jab. And so we're pulling in these people that are speaking to both sides. And Washington said parties would ruin this country. And he was not wrong.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting is that with the COVID vaccine, there were people on both sides pushing for it, but then there are also those who said, hey, it's our freedom of choice. And I think that freedom of choice idea is key. And when the vaccines were being pushed in this country and they were being forced, like, keep in mind, in Washington, D.C., in order to go into a restaurant or any building, you had to have the COVID vaccine. They got rid of that pretty quickly. But for a while, I was like, I am not going into DC. I'm staying in my Arlington area, because I was in Arlington right outside of DC. But people could not go into their restaurants. And there was this restaurant specifically that would allow people to go in without a vaccine mandate. So the city kind of put this vaccine mandate, but then this guy, he was defying them, and they tried to shut him down.
Right.
And gratefully, the media heard it. People like Senator Rand Paul even decided to go take a visit, and is like, hey, thank you for what you are doing. You are standing against the grain. And we definitely need more of those people to stand against the grain, no matter how scary it is. And I'm glad people are waking up and not being afraid anymore. And you mentioned I did pageants. I saw a lot of my pageant girls, my friends and everyone, to start to speak up for their support for freedom in this country. It's like, yes, I voted for Trump. Not that I agree with him all the time, but I was tired of what was going on in this country.
It's true. And it didn't age well. And I watch old podcasts and things that were happening during the 2020 era, 2021, people from LA who were terrified of this virus and said it was the unvaccinated that were the problem. And yet they're down with COVID and they've had every vax known to man. And it didn't age well. And you only had a sprinkle in areas like that, even in Canada, where pastors, truckers, some restaurants, some gyms, like small business owners that actually stood up to it. And there's now millions who should be able to sue because the information wasn't all clear about that vaccine. And now it's just hasn't aged well, right?
My favorite is that they made that little dinky thing that you put your finger through and it had a little, so you could push the elevator button. I saw that and I was like, oh, we're done.
People were spraying their groceries down with disinfectant. I mean, this was terrifying everyone. And for me, when someone's trying so hard to sell me something, it's such a red flag. Of course, I'm married to a salesman, so we both have that same, like, why are they pushing? Why are they making full commercials and children's songs about how I'm killing grandma because I refuse to get this vaccine that was created in 6 months. And Trump's in a bad spot because he pushed to have that created. And he wanted to reduce the red tape and get big pharma together and big minds and say, hey, give us an answer here. But look at all the stuff was handed to him. Misinformation to our president.
Well, it wasn't just that, but he never wanted to force it on everyone. He wanted to make it, as far as I know.
No, he was against mandates. He did say that.
I mean, all the stuff that came out then, we had a guy at work that used hand sanitizer so much, his hands were like raw and red and infected. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
They tried to make it a cultural thing, a society thing to let society clean itself up. The government didn't have to do one mandate. What they did is encouraged companies to put them in place. So, no, you can't fly without this. No, you can't go to this hotel. No, your kid can't go to school. And so it was like private industry was being controlled, not out loud by the government, but by some secret force, being our CIA, FBI, going into their businesses, like the Twitter files showed, and pushing this information. And to me, that was just a red light and a red flag. All those years, it just did not feel right. And yet, I mean, if it wasn't for the people of our county, for example, going against the mask mandate, we might have been masked just like Los Angeles or Summit County. But the people came out in mass and they said, do not vote for this. You're not shutting our businesses down. You are not masking our kids. And it was amazing to watch. And we found out that a lot of hospitals could very well, just by the way they were treating COVID patients, could have been killing them.
And it's kind of ridiculous. Like, I visited Utah, what is it, December 2020, like when COVID was around and everything. And I went to Summit County and everyone was masked. Like Salt Lake County, I feel like there was a mandate, not really a mandate, but like it was recommended.
Salt Lake and Summit both were the two counties that wanted to have the mandates. Everyone else, no, it was like regular life.
Yeah, but Summit County, it's like I was up there. I was like, holy moly, everyone is wearing a mask. I mean, in DC, everyone was wearing a mask too. And I'm like, I don't feel comfortable. I feel squashed together. And like when I get sick and start sneezing, people still freaked out when I was sneezing or coughing into my mask. I'm like, if you were so concerned about this, like, what are you gonna do? And then they say double mask all of a sudden. And
right. Just put a plastic bag over your head and that should end it all.
Maybe you should just wear, what are those things? The hazmat suits at this point. I've seen people wear hazmat suits or go crazy with helmets on flights. So I'm like, can you chill? I will admit, on the plane when flying, I was kind of glad that the middle seat was like blocked off because I had more space, but it ended up having flights ended up having to deal with a lot of issues financially because they couldn't sell all their tickets in the first place. But I love
they were throwing They were throwing 2-year-olds and whole families off because a 2-year-old refused to wear a mask. And yet an airplane's supposed to have some of the cleanest air there is with the way it recirculates and all of that. And you can have the mask down if you're eating, but if you're not eating, like these rules were so stupid, made
I am
no sense.
I am so grateful that I did not have a kid during COVID at all. And that being because speech is so important when teaching these kids. You need them to see your mouth. They need to see your
Absolutely.
face. That's how they learn about you. That's how they learn how to speak. And my son just turned 2. It's like I could not put a mask on him. He would just take it off at this point.
My children were being taught we were doing a homeschool type thing. And I remember it perfectly. My daughter's vocabulary spelling teacher, she was I think from China, and she had on a mask. So she had an accent. And when she's saying A, E, I, you couldn't understand what she was saying. And so I reached out to the school and I'm like, can you put on a shield? I mean, these kids aren't even in the room with her. Why does she have to teach with a mask on? And she's teaching a fundamental thing I believe she was in 2nd grade or 3rd grade. This has gone from let's be smart to let's just throw everything out the window to sell this lie and put fear in people so badly. And finally, they did give her a shield because if you don't see the way their mouth is moving, you can't understand what they're saying, regardless. But then throw an accent in there and it's doomed. It's doomed. So we had 2 good years where our kids' their whole progression and growing up was put on hold. And my children were right there in the thick of it. And what it did is it created kids are behind.
Mhm.
Kids missed out on very crucial social settings and bonding with teachers and strangers that become your teacher, that are your teachers that you grow with, and then the basic reading and skills that they need. That just to me is one of the biggest. I hope that historians give it the proper explanation of what it was, and if they don't smack the government with that, and Dr. Fauci's name should be up there in big, big, bold letters because it was theater. It was all theater.
Just never forget what they did to the school kids at all. And I remember seeing parents decide, I am not going to have my kid in the school system. Like, I'm going to homeschool them, or I'm going to throw them in another school that's open and doesn't have all these mask and COVID mandates all of a sudden. And this is kind of the main area of my work. I'm mostly doing education policy, but the learning loss we saw from COVID, we saw it in the test scores, we saw it in children's ability to speak. I was like, oh my goodness, this is so scary for the future of our country. And you're finally seeing the test scores. They're still low, but they're slowly creaking back up, but they're still really bad. And all of a sudden, I see with the school system as well, that's when parents started to notice what kids were learning. Of course, I think like the gender ideology and all the CRT, that was there long before COVID, but parents only started realizing that during COVID, and it confused kids a lot more. Like they were having to deal with all these mandates, and now all of a sudden they're learning things that aren't related to education. So it's kind of crazy seeing how one thing led to another in our education system in that
True.
regard.
I would argue our education system going back to probably the birth of the Department of Education is a reason why we acted like we did during COVID. I'm an old man, and I remember in school there was the buds of them teaching the worship of failure and weakness.
Mhm.
And shoot, that was, I graduated school 30 years ago.
That was the beginning when
Yeah,
they
I
started
remember
giving everyone a trophy and
and that was our
stopped
generation.
highlighting kids for their successes and started making the abnormal special. And, talk about not even just test scores, but look at the kids, the suicide rates, the depression, the anxiety in young kids that just skyrocketed. And how can they have any sense of safety when their own parents are feeling that exact same anxiety?
Mhm.
And, or the opposite, like my household, I wasn't afraid of it. And I'd had it early on. And I was like, hey, this sucks, but we're going to get through this. And, heaven forbid you have allergies and you're sneezing on a bus or on the metro and people are freaking out. I mean, it could put you in danger. You saw the videos of women being cornered in grocery stores by the masses because the woman didn't have a mask on. And yet most of the people cornering her, their mask is down here and they're rubbing it and pulling on it all day. And you're thinking, moron, you're not even supposed to touch it.
What's even crazier, in schools especially, there were kids who had the masks taped to their faces, and some of them had breathing problems, asthma problems. Oh my goodness. Dear Lord, help those kids who had asthma and breathing problems trying to wear those masks. My poor sister, she has asthma issues and she had to wear that mask. I mean, she wasn't in school all the time. She goes to college right now, but she did a lot of learning from home, but oh, bless all those families who had to deal with all those issues at that point too. And oh, I couldn't even imagine having to do that. I worked from home mostly during COVID, but there were times like I'd have to go to Capitol Hill or elsewhere and I'd have to throw on a mask all of a sudden and I was just feeling sick. And sometimes I wonder, there was a time, especially during COVID, where I kind of lost my energy as well as my ability to speak all the time, and I'd even say at this point I'm still trying to regain my public speaking skills. And because of COVID, I feel like I completely lost my ability to speak sometimes and don't know what to say. And all of a sudden these kids, they're trying to learn how to talk, they're trying to learn how to speak, and COVID kind of just ruined that for them.
So do you think maybe COVID and the aftermath, or like the people in Canada, for example, that were so shut in, people in LA that were so shut in, where it was so crazy, maybe that was the jumping off point. I mean, maybe we needed Trump to lose that election so that we would be awake to what happens when the government actually decides to mandate for us, but they do it so sneakily that they put it on the businesses to do. And in Australia, they were shipping people to COVID camps.
No, call them what they are. They're
I mean,
concentration camps.
this is maybe what the country and the world needed to wake up and go, wait a minute, more people are dying because of the way you're handling this situation than what you initially said would happen if we didn't shut down. I
Well-
mean, look how many people died in hospitals because they put respirators on COVID patients. They found out later respirators were not safe for COVID
Mhm.
patients.
I did not know
Live
that.
and learn, but how many millions have died because of that? I mean, I think that lawsuits, I'm surprised our courts, they haven't had to design a specific wing of a court and justice system just to settle COVID issues between
Yeah.
hospitals and government and local businesses. I mean, it's insane. And I don't know how we got so onto the COVID thing, but I know so many people that were personally affected. And if it wasn't someone they lost, then it was something that they lost, either time with their family or their child kind of zoned out or their child dropped in grades. My kid got his first F during the COVID time. And I'm thinking, all kids should have gotten A's. That was ridiculous.
Well, let's remember I was podcasting at that time. Let's remember that if on the podcast you said COVID, your podcast
did.
got taken down.
Yeah. And Carrie just said the amount of people who took their own lives shouldn't be discounted either. And I
No.
absolutely agree with that. That's something that is an effect when a government fills a populace full of fear with no hope other than to walk in lockstep, do this, don't leave your house. Everybody that is not doing this is the enemy, which means grandma could be the enemy, mom could be the enemy. And it builds something in children who need that assurance and that safety, and they need to know it's going to be okay. The climate change people have done it for years to our kids, especially through school. This was an ideal situation for the government, and we got to see how it played out in other countries. And now, like, look at the vaccine has done to other people. I mean, there's so many things wrong that I hope, if anything, The American people are awake and will never tolerate that again, ever.
Maybe 50% of them.
That's
Anyways,
the sad part.
I want to dig into, what do you think? Do you think the Republican Party is different now? Do you think it's different? Do you think it's going to continue to carry this new Republican mentality forward? Or do you think this, what's your thoughts? What's your feeling? You're a lot closer to more movers and shakers than we are. What's your thoughts on it?
It's definitely different. I'm going to say that straight and out. I remember being in Utah back, 2017, 2018, when I first got involved. I would say there was a lot with the party that was very divided. You got all of a sudden the conservative people, you got the pro-caucus people, the anti-caucus people, you had all that drama. But I feel like all of a sudden, I don't know what happened with the Utah GOP this year, but I just kind of saw, kind of with everyone, there's a little more unity than usual than in the past. I mean, granted, whatever your thoughts are on the current governor as well as some other political leaders in the state, but I saw kind of more unification of that in the Utah GOP. But nationally, I saw more people come together. For example, I just remember like the libertarians were all of a sudden jumping on the Trump train. Was like, oh, I did not see this coming. But the Libertarian Party had nominated someone who was, I think, very pro-Obama, Chase Oliver, and he had supported a lot of Democrats in the past. And it's like, oh, we don't like this guy. We're going to go with Trump because
he felt like a plant.
Well, here's what Chase Oliver is. Chase Oliver is, he calls himself a libertarian, but he was pro-mandate. He's pro-mandate, pro-child mandate. He's pro-gun. That's how he crossed over into the libertarian matrix. He is, of course, I don't know how to put it any other way. He's a homosexual man, which I don't think would preclude someone from being a Republican nowadays, especially under Donald Trump. Donald Trump seems to be, I don't think Donald Trump cares what your bedroom or skin color or any of that. I don't think he cares about any of that. He just cares about, I don't know what he cares about.
Yeah. Can you do the job? Can you fight for the country at this point? And the GOP is at an interesting crossroads because we are trying to balance our traditional principles, our pro-life principles, our pro-family principles with the new dynamics, because we have so many new things. But I think the biggest thing now, it is focused on fighting the establishment. I have seen people from the left decide to support Donald Trump because they're just kind of tired of what is going on in DC. They did not want Kamala Harris, some big establishment and deep state person in Washington, DC. And there's like, she doesn't do anything. She kind of sits there and laughs. That's it. And she's kind of done nothing. I mean, Joe Biden has done nothing while in office too. And back to your point.
Oh, I don't know. I'm sure he'd feel to depend.
No, he's done damage is what he's done. And Kamala, she was the first one to be voted out when there actually was a primary in 2020. And the thing is nobody chose her. And I think that the way that they pushed Biden out after the press is telling you for 4 years that he's the most spry guy we have, and he's running circles around people in DC, and he's so smart and he's part of all of this. They put him on the main stage for that debate and they made an ass out of him.
I think they tried
made it
cooking
even
him
better. Yeah, I think the Democrat Party did it. The man couldn't stand trial for himself because he wasn't mentally capable, according to a special attorney that they ordered. Sorry, we can't convict this man over his documents because doesn't have the mental capacity. And then the same breath they're telling you he's okay to run our country.
Oh, people, he's still
running our country. And then for them to install someone that not one person voted for, not one person even liked in 2020. She was the first one out. She couldn't even get on the big boy stage. No one was voting for her. She couldn't even get that much of, I think 2% was her top. And then they install her. Then they spend the next 6 weeks telling you how great she is. And yet people who lived under her rule as the attorney general of California or as the DA in San Francisco are saying, no, this woman is terrible. She's a puppet. She doesn't think for herself. She's running. I mean, she prosecutes anything that walks, and it's not fair. She's not smart. And yet they have to swallow this pill. And the Democrats have been so great about getting along, going along to get along. And especially under Obama was king. He tells them they would be in lockstep. But with Biden, it's like the scene from Naked Gun where you've got the guy going, there's nothing to see here, keep moving. And yet there's explosions happening behind him and all this stuff. That's what the American people were witnessing this whole past year.
That was the mostly peaceful protest. My favorite was Michael Malice on Joe Rogan talking about Kamala, and Michael Malice says you can't say anything bad about her because it's sexist, it's racist, it's ableist. And Joe goes, wait, ableist? What do you mean? He says, well, she's retarded.
What's crazy?
He just said it just softball, deadpan it across. I fell out of my chair. That was the funniest thing I ever heard. Well, she's retarded.
Yeah, what's crazy is that I had one of my friends here. So she's more moderate, but she said, there's no way I'm voting for Kamala Harris. And she said, I think a lot of my friends think I'm voting for Kamala Harris, but I am voting for Donald Trump because I just don't want Kamala Harris. I think there are a lot of Democrats who just did not want Kamala Harris because of how incompetent she is. And going back to 2020 with Joe Biden winning and him just being president plant, house plant, my husband calls him, these last years, you basically saw him do all this damage to this country. And I think the wake up point for a lot of people I started noticing before like the election year happened was in 2021. It was August, I think, when the pullout from Afghanistan happened, when that we were trying to withdraw from there, and people were like, oh my goodness, I do not want a war, but we need to get these people out.
It
But
was September 11th.
Yeah.
And he pulled out and left. Here's the thing, and I've said this before on the show. He left thousands of night optical devices. That is our secret weapon as a military. And he left thousands of them on the tarmac.
$80 billion worth of military gear, planes, and enough to make them an army better than most armies in the world.
The nods are
and Americans
are our big thing. The nods, and Americans and allies, but the nods are a big thing. That has been how we've controlled the night in war fighting. Ask your husband. The nods that's the scariest part. Guns, we can train around guns, but nods is something we had that no one else had. And he gave them to them.
Then he gave them aid. And then he negotiated with them like they were a superpower. And
he still gives them aid, but that's to stop China.
Insane. And yet, I'm glad you brought up Afghanistan because I don't ever want anyone to forget that. This was such a huge, and he says, well, I was following Trump's plan. Yeah, in reverse. That plan was laid out. You get all the American citizens out. You get all of the people that helped America out that you promised them. And you do it slowly and safely. And the last people to leave is the American soldier who's there to make sure all this is done well and safe. And they take all their stuff with them. He did it backwards. We're going to get as many people out and we're going to make a mockery. And then tells people it was a success. Again, like we didn't see it happening. Keep moving. There's nothing to see here. Everything is great. This was a great pullout. Insanity, if not criminal, on behest of an actual leader of this nation. I don't know why treason has not been a charge, but this blanket pardon he's attempting to do right now, he's leading all the presidents except for Jimmy Carter. I don't know if anyone can beat him because he did a blanket pardon on 200,000 draft dodgers when he left office. But right now he's got more pardons going out. Fauci's going to be on that. Clinton's will be on that. Nancy Pelosi will be on that. Well, why do these people need pardons if everything he did was above board?
I am absolutely just concerned about what's going on with the Biden administration, with him sending all this money to many different countries, but then seeing him pardon all these people who are actual criminals is just, I don't even want to say, it's like, is it obscene? Is it just absurd that
It's
you've even
treason.
Democrats, treason? You got Democrats even calling Biden out right now for everything he has been doing. I think I saw something from Joe Manchin saying, "Hey, I talked to the parents of, I can't remember who it was, about someone who killed their daughter, and like they're I'm not happy right now." So what Joe Biden is doing, I don't even know if he's running this operation. I'm wondering if it's someone telling him, pardon all these people, and he's just following along with it at this point. And then back to my other point about sending all this money to all these different countries when we can't even protect our own people. And I've always been this anti-war person, even long before the Republican Party, like conservatives and the MAGA movement, as well as America First, started to jump on board of it. It's like, I've always been anti-war. It's like, why are we spending all this money for wars that just keep going on, and wars that are all of a sudden here and all of a sudden they should be ending? Like, why are we sending all this money to Ukraine? Why are we sending all this money to on the Middle East? Why are we sending it all over the place? Israel, I know everyone can debate on. I always feel like, let's go help our people first, but Israel, they are an ally to us as well. But it's like, I really don't want to spend money overseas either,
I'm
because our
with you.
suffering.
But I think you send money. Why are you sending money to people who obviously hate us, who are training people to kill us, and who hate our way of life? That should be the first rule. Look, if they say death to America, no, let them take care of themselves. Israel, yes, if they need assistance, they are our greatest ally. So is Britain, but they're also able to take care of themselves. What we do as their greatest ally is stand back and let them handle what they're handling and support them. We don't throw all this money towards them when we've got North Carolina, Florida, and all the places in between, Hawaii, that are all still suffering from just natural disasters. And we're 750 a person should be fine. And yet Ukraine has gotten almost, what is it, $200,000 per person in Ukraine, the
Yes.
equivalency.
Mhm.
That is another thing that woke the American people up to go, wait a minute. And I have to say, the governor of Texas, Abbott, who started sending immigrants throughout the country. We knew the government was doing this already under the dark of night. But when Abbott starts shipping people to New York and starts saying, hey, if you guys don't think there's a problem at the border, then here, you have some of these folks. And watching these Chicago, New York crumble because they can't afford it. And yet Texas deals with it every single day. That woke American people up. And for a time, we had Democrats and Republicans believing immigration was one of the number one problems with this country and wanted change. And they were in agreement for the first time in, I don't even know how many years, in my lifetime, where they were both coming to the table saying, nope, this cannot sustain. This is not safe for our nation. And we need to know who's coming across the border. It's plain and
Exactly. And
simple.
as a legal immigrant, we worked so hard as a family to come to this country. I was one when I came here. My dad found
From
a job
where?
a long time. We are from the Philippines.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
And
Okay.
it's
Do you still know any of the language? I forget the name of the language. What's it called?
a lot of languages, but a lot of the main one, it's Tagalog. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, no, but I do understand it to a small degree. So at least I know what my parents are talking about.
So you know when your mom's coming at you with the slipper, you know what you did.
So your parents, what did your dad do when he came over?
So he was starting in IT. It was his first job, and he still works in IT, and that's kind of sustained our family for a long time. He graduated top of his university at the top university in the Philippines back in, I don't know, a long time ago. I don't want to age my dad, but he was one of the top people in his school, and he came here because he worked hard and because he wanted a better life for his family, and we've gotten that better life. And all of a sudden there are these illegal immigrants who are coming over the border, and especially a lot of criminal illegal aliens who are coming over and harming our American people. And I also think back to the southern border about how so much money was being sent to these illegal immigrants for aid, then how all this money was also being sent to Lebanon. While we here in Augusta were struggling with recovery from Hurricane Helene, and not many people even knew that Augusta was really hit. Most people knew about North Carolina, and guess what? They're still suffering. FEMA is hardly around. They are here, but they decide, oh, we don't work on Christmas, we don't work on the holidays, even if people are struggling. I was like, I'm so glad people came together to help each other
Right.
recover, and we are still recovering from that. But back to the immigration story. I know I'm going off on so many tangents, but
We tend to do that with people. Sorry.
it's all good. But back to immigration, it just makes me more grateful to be an American because my family worked hard to live in this country. And it took my parents 10 years to officially become citizens. 10 years. And then there are
Yeah.
other people who kind of like to take shortcuts and all of a sudden become citizens before us. I'm like, what about the legal immigrants who came here and worked hard? And what are we getting? It takes us longer. And for some reason, people also don't even really care about it. It's like, oh, we don't care about you. You should wait in line longer. It's like, but we've
And
been
how
working.
many thousands of dollars on top of those 10 years? Thousands of dollars they spend to get their citizenship. If anything, we need to reform citizenship and the ability to attain it, reform it right from the beginning so that your father doesn't take 10 years. He's obviously wants to be an American. His kids are going to be American, and he wants to acclimate into the American spirit and that freedom. And that's what he's leaving behind. He's leaving homeland to provide a better life for his children. And yet, why does it take 10 years for the people who want it?
I
That
would
needs to
even
be
say for some
fixed.
other people, it takes longer. I mean, I don't know if you've been following what's been going on in the Twitter world right now, but people are talking about reforming our immigration system. I mean, the people who want to come here legally, it's great. It's immigration system with the workspaces, that's a whole other conversation. But it's like the people who want to come here and work legally, they should come here. But I also think, like, let's also train our American workers at the same time so they can have a lot of these jobs as well. So we don't need to keep prioritizing people from overseas. Like, it's great to have those people, especially if they want to become citizens. But our American workforce, we need a lot of help reforming the change in the education system to
Amen.
keep our family going. And our culture, like, come on, our culture. We prioritize celebrity status in this country. Like, what's going on with that? People want to be YouTubers, Instagram influencers. And I would say those are very hard jobs in a way. I mean, but you kind of need to grow your own thing in that regard, but it's not meant for everybody. A lot of people, we need skilled workers, we need blue collar workers, we need people to be in the office. Everyone should have their place in this country. So let's kind of change like how our system works in this country, because we can't have everybody be social media influencers. We need people to do all the other different job opportunities too.
It's
Yeah,
true.
we need I dare say a quota system on our immigration.
We have
Right
one.
now, our illegal
1 million.
immigration is just putting pressure on the most unfortunate Americans. And a quota system where IT guys, we open it up. We need IT guys, take a test, prove, and we'll get you on track to come over here, instead of just constantly putting pressure on our people who have it the hardest in our country. We need to stop that.
But that's education, what she's saying, and that needs a whole revamp right from the beginning, K through 12.
Well, we got
We
to
need
go
to
back
quit
in
telling
time.
children. We need to. This is what I noticed in my kid, for example, and they just started high school. They do an assessment test on what career he'd be good at, and the end result was just so crazy. It was like, oh, you'd be a great server or a bartender, and I'm like, my kid could whip anybody's butt at most things computer.
Be a
And you're
good-
telling him to be a bartender. Not that I have anything wrong with being a bartender. I am a bartender. I'm an event coordinator. I can do a lot of great things in hospitality. But my child is capable of more than that. Quit telling children what they're going to be and teach them how to take control of their individual spirit and decide for themselves. And I love that used to be part of the American dream. When we were growing up, we were told we could be anything we want.
Well,
And-
Obama destroyed. He took any vocational learning out of our high school system, or under him it was done. I don't know if it was him particularly, but that's when we lost it. And they pushed A lot
pushed
more
college instead
art
of
and
trade schools.
arts and band, and but they got rid of vocation. Got rid of welding and mechanics and agriculture out of the school system.
They
And
took a lot out of the school systems, and I've noticed students have been suffering a lot for it. And I mean, I would say our education was created in a way that it kind of reduce that ability to kind of create something for yourself and be who you want to be with your own career and have your own career, have your own job, be what you want. But the old education system has kind of been pushing that way. It's like, oh, you need to teach to the test, you need to teach to this kind of system. And it's originally for meant for factory workers, but not
yep,
everyone's a factory worker. Our education system should be teaching kids how to prepare for their future, not just teach to a test. And boy, they are so bored. I mean, I would say tests have their own place, but I think we also need to reform the way we do testing as well with our kids.
well, and also the testing benefits females. The males have been lost out of our education system because of testing, the sitting still all day. They did away with recess. Recess doesn't hurt. The lack of recess doesn't hurt females like it does males. Males are boiling over with energy that they need to release. And
they
they
still
d-
have recess in K through
Mm,
6 usually.
not as much, not
Not
like
as much anymore. I had 2 recesses in elementary. Granted, I went to a Christian school where they prioritized kids having a lot of energy, and it was a private school, but I know in public schools, I think in Vegas when I was there, they had shorter recesses. And like kids need
Mhm.
to release their energy, boys and girls, and especially boys. I don't know if you heard Jordan Peterson say this, but kids, like we put them on amphetamines and medicine, but boys need to be out and about and get release all their energy. My son, he's 2, he's so energetic. He needs to be out and about doing something. He can't
Yep.
sit still all day. We tried putting him in chairs and like, nope, he needs to run around, and I let
They
him
need to
do.
move. And you need to entice them. I want you right now, any of you, go to, even you, your son's a freshman in school. Go pull the books they're assigning him to read in English and tell me if any young lady wouldn't love reading that, but any boy would be bored to death in that book. And that's what they
My
have
kids
them read.
went to a charter. In fact, Carrie Bartholomew mentions 1984 or The Giver as like somewhat of how they've kind of told people what they're going to be and they assign it and that's it. My son actually read The Giver, I think in 6th grade and loved it. And he's reading books that he chooses, but what's gone and what's missing is that entrepreneurial spirit that they're teaching, that America was famous for, that individual thing. I mean, being a plumber is great, but be a plumber, but own your own business and be a boss and teach people how to be a plumber because you're always going to need that. Electricians, don't take away the very trades that sustain this nation. And then giving away benefits to people who sneak over the border, for example, or people who aren't citizens, giving away tax dollars to give them medical schooling. So they're stopping school, just kind of stops because they can't communicate with teachers, and teachers can't teach because these kids don't understand, yet they're going there for free and they're not citizens. And it puts everybody's kid on hold. And then food stamps and electricity and housing and all this stuff that a regular American citizen isn't going to get. The whole system is broken. It needs to go to the garbage, to the streets with it. It's got to be revamped, started over. We know it doesn't work because these people will not give up it's harder to take something away than it is to just not give it in the first place. And we have to make that all go away if we want people to quit, sneaking over the border. Because right now they're coming in because they're gaining something.
So I'm always wondering, is the system broken or is the system created as is and it's intentional and it's something we need to completely throw out and just start all over again? Because everyone says, oh, the system's broken, we try to fix it. But at the same time,
That's intentional.
we need to do it. It's so intentional. So
Just
it's
read
like we
what
need to
Horace
start
Mann
over.
wrote. Horace
Exactly.
Mann
Horace
is Yeah, Horace Mann is the guy who designed our education system in the beginning, and this is what his
Common
dream was.
His common schools just force kids like factory workers, even the immigrants who came over to this country. Horace Mann's like, oh, we need to kind of teach them a certain way so they can kind of prepare to be these factory workers in the future. Then you've had Rockefeller say, I want a nation of workers, not thinkers as well. It's like that is absolutely insane how our education system was created and they're trying to still push it. And gratefully, there's a movement right now, like this micro school movement, where all these educators are realizing that these kids aren't getting what they need in these schools and they're trying to transform education in a way that they are preparing and using their interests and still preparing for the future at the same time. So it's needed, but hopefully that will bring a lot of change to our system. But it's a slow process of getting rid of what we currently have and bringing in that new change.
Yes. If I'm telling you right now, if you're a parent and you own your own business, especially vocational business or somewhere where you can bring a young person in, homeschool your kid and make it so 3 days a week their schooling is with you. You'll benefit them 1,000 times more than any high school will.
It's true.
Exactly.
Right now, testing, when you brought up testing, it's specifically designed, whether intentionally or not, but to memorize something very, very quickly in a very astute time so that they can reiterate it back on paper immediately. And boys have a harder time than girls, but kids aren't digesting the knowledge. And it's like, we're training you every day so that you will test well. We don't care if you learned anything. It's about your testing. And that's where our state's failing because we put so much on these tests and Common Core. I mean, this is how they're judging all this stuff and all this progress. I'm sorry. When you graduate from high school, can you read? Can you run a checkbook or do you understand numbers? These things, can you have free thought to where you can dissect in and just based on your experience and logic, whether or not to put a mask on your 2-year-old as an adult? We're not teaching them adulting skills. We're not giving them that thought because otherwise we're crippling them. The second they get out of the house, they're terrified of the world. They don't feel like going for something that they want, and they kind of just settle into whatever they might be good at. And yet they may have no interest in it. None. And then they work the rest of their life into their 70s and hope they can retire. It's like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? It's all by design, and it's like a communist design. We're making the worker bees so the elites will have what they want. The rich will stay rich and the poor will stay poor.
It's a Fabian design.
And you're also talking about 1984 and The Giver. The Giver was my favorite book in sixth grade, and I think it ended up transforming the way I thought politically. I really didn't develop my political views until later on, but I always had freedom on the mind
Yeah.
because you don't want to be forced into society that tells you what your career is going to be, whether or not you can have a certain amount of kids. Oh my goodness. The idea that like you can only have a certain amount of kids and you're placed with certain families, like I do not want that kind of culture and society in this world. And I even put on my applications for internships, like what book has transformed your ideology? Believe it or not, it's The Giver. I was in sixth grade when I read this. And I think there are a few things in that book I wouldn't want my son to read. He's 2, but later on, I don't know. But there are some things in that book that are still really important for us to think about, especially when it comes to creativity and freedom. And that is something our kids are losing right now when it comes to their education and their futures. And oh my goodness, I loved how the arts kind of helped me figure it out what I want to do because it kind of pushed me in a way that I was able to have found my love and passion for music. I almost made it my career, but instead I ended up using my passion and love for that to help me find a passion and love for something else. And I ended up majoring in business, but I ended up finding a passion for fighting for America. And I'm so happy for what I do now in my life and my career. And I could not imagine doing anything else at this point. Not everyone ends up working in politics and public policy, but I found my place and I'm so happy here because what drives me and wakes me up each morning is being able to fight for our country and speak the truth.
I love it.
I've got a thought. So, or a question, just a query, I guess. So right now, our college admissions and graduations are flipped 60-40 female to male. We're standing on top of a demographic collapse because of that. And I hear that that is underhandedly the reason for our immigration push. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think there's a way to pull out of that to make it, because females don't want to, for lack of a saner term, breed down. They want to breed across and up. And so with so many more females graduating college than males, that's causing a gap in the ability for the pair bonding of, citizens to make more children. Then we're having a demographic collapse because of that, along with that, science, everything else. Is there a way out of that?
I'm not sure. I'll be honest. I haven't thought about it. And besides that, a lot of these women, I mean, I married a husband who hasn't finished college. He's military. So, in a way, I'd say I kind of went up because I've married someone who has those opportunities and things that not many people have. But I don't know. I think there's something in our college system and education system that's so, how do we say the word? Wouldn't say it's feminine, it's feminist. Like they kind of push
Oh,
women ideology
100%.
more. It was like you read all these books. I love the classics, don't get me wrong, but a lot of these
And you should. You're a female. You should love them.
I do
You're
love them,
supposed
but
to.
there is so much ideology that romanticizes the idea of pushing women out there more than men. Like men are degraded a lot in
All
these
the
books
time.
all the time. I wouldn't say the classics as much, but a lot of the books you'd read in school, and it makes men and boys look bad. It's like men, I don't know what's our society is just very interesting. I mean, men, what do they want to do? A lot of times they want to be in their man holes, their man caves, and just chill and kind of not be in existence. Men are not stepping up to the plate when it comes to being around women. Like, come on, like pursue these women, be with these women, and I don't know. I mean, maybe women need to realize that
They do.
like it's not college isn't for everyone. Men, especially, I don't think a lot of them fit into college just because of what they are expected to be. Because I don't know, there's something that kind of makes men less. Like what's the word? I wouldn't say it makes them feminist.
I
It
can
makes
explain. Prager, you did a whole study on it, and it starts in elementary, junior high, high school. A teacher will give an assignment: write a short story or something. This is the assignment for your grade. A girl will write a story, start to finish. It'll involve love and emotion and relationships and all of that. And a boy will write a story about aliens conquering the earth, and there'll be a lot of violence, and there'll be a lot of noise and coolness, and the kid will get a worse grade. The boy will get a worse grade because the
really
teacher didn't feel moved. This goes all the way into college. This is the system we've done, and yet the child should be raised on whether or not he created a story, whether or not he knew when to use a period and a comma and capitalization. And it's not. Teachers are judging a boy based on what a girl can do, and they're not giving that boy a fair shot. When yet some of the biggest movies you'll ever see are those aliens taking over the world and big blockbusters and superheroes. The things that boys think about are different than what girls think about. And just
yeah,
because they're different does not make them worse or better. And then we've got this culture. And if you listen to Jordan Peterson, he's talked about this at length, that we are having a birth shortage that is going to cripple us if it hasn't already started, because women think they're not having kids until their 30s because they're waiting around for that Prince Charming. They're waiting around for that guy is equal to them in certain ways. And men aren't going to play and put money into college if it's not going to give them something in return. They're not gaining anything, and they're pulling out of college. Like, why would I spend $100,000 to get a degree in basket weaving when I could be out there now making a career in anything else.
Be a
And
business
yet,
owner, be an entrepreneur, but
yeah, and yet women won't marry me because I'm doing a blue collar job. And yet I'm a guarantee I could be a dad. I can come home after work. I can provide for a family. But women have got their standards up here thinking, oh, I'm going to marry a doctor or a lawyer. There's not enough of those. And women's standards are too damn high. They need someone that's going to treat them well, who's going to care about the offspring, and who's invested in a long term commitment. And you want that. That's what every woman should be looking for. And your odds of having a baby, I think, in the science world that Jordan Peterson was hosting with another gentleman regarding the birth shortage is 50% once you hit 30. You have a 50-50 shot. And yet we've raised a culture of young girls who think, wait till you're 30 to start your family.
you don't know how many times I was told this in Washington, D.C. I got married at 25. And I think in Utah terms, that's an old maid.
Yeah, that's
but
geriatric. That is. Holy cow. Did they
25.
make you wear a gray veil?
No, I mean, I was being told, even by some of my fellow conservative friends in DC, they were telling me, you're so young, go enjoy your life right now. My parents got married a little older, but this was the Philippines and they didn't find their own people and they did want to find the best person for them. I found the best person for me and I have standards that are up here. But at the same time, it's like I want someone who'll be able to provide for my family and care for my family. My husband, gratefully, he's military, so he's able to provide and care for our family, even without a college degree. I think girls need to realize that just because a guy doesn't have a college degree doesn't mean he won't be able to support you. If anything, I just hope it changes in a way that we're prioritizing skills over degree at this point. I see some change in that because skills are so much more useful in the long run instead of having some kind of liberal arts job. I'm saying there's some great liberal arts jobs out there, like
Sure.
public policy, media, liberal arts, but men, they have this instinctive nature to provide for their family. I have a friend who he works in local media here, and he's like, I'm not making enough money, and I want to be able to provide for a family one day, which is absolutely noble. He has a college degree and everything, but he realizes he needs to make a career change so he can provide for his family in the future.
Because that is that's science. They want to care for their offspring. My husband doesn't have a college degree, but I've never wanted for anything in my life. Nothing. He makes my dreams come true. And what makes it so amazing is it's not about money, it's security. Women are seeking security and they're seeking a parent to partner with them in raising their children. And I would have had more children if science was better to me, but I wasn't chosen for a lot of kids. But I know my father was a policeman, and between him and my stepmother, they had 6 kids. We didn't see him much except for on vacations, but we wanted for nothing. We had a fantastic childhood, and he was always there when we needed him. We need to glorify fathers, and yet movies, books, society will downplay the importance of a father. And yet I think a father is one of the most, in my personal life and just looking at society, they are one of the most important stabilities there is in the world. If this world had committed fathers, we wouldn't have half the problems we have. We wouldn't. Because fathers are that important. Mothers are that important too. But you need them both, and you need them both to care about the future and their prosperity, which is their children. And we need them to each make children. Everyone should make children. Society dies if we don't.
Kids, please get married, have kids. Look, I am so tired of my generation saying it's like, oh, I want to go party, have fun. Guess what? I still go party and have fun, obviously in a very different way than most people, but you can still have so much fun when you're married with kids. In fact, it is so much more fun when you're married with kids. And obviously, I hope men will step up to the plate and women will step up to the plate to realize that they should be getting married, because I see people date for eons and eons and years and they don't
Yeah,
get
what are they waiting for?
like get married, please, like right now. Like obviously I wish there were also people who were able to find their people at a young age too, because there's some people who wait longer because they can't find their person. But it also comes back to our culture that men and women aren't stepping up to the plate to realize what they want, because men and women both need to step up to the plate and say, hey, I this is what I want. I want to get married. I want to have a family. I want to be a husband. I want to be a wife, and I want to have kids someday. I think that's something we need to prioritize more in this society, in our culture, in our country, because it is such a fulfilling thing. And I would say my career has escalated so much because of my kids. So you can't get me that thing saying, oh, my career is going to suffer because I have kids now. My career has escalated ever since having my son.
Well, you're saying too, people are obsessed with stuff and clout, and they're not thinking about their prosperity, their future, and they need to think about that. You were a whole woman before you had your husband or your child. You were a whole woman. We're all whole people. Adding these people to our lives. I mean, marriages are 50-50 now, I think, if they're going to work out. But a child is 100% always. If you are lucky enough to have a child, you're going to screw it up. We all are going to screw it up. That nobody teaches us how to be a proper parent. But when you have two parents who love that child's going to be okay. And that child's going to be a good parent someday because he's had it in front of him and she has seen it in front of him. And I think with girls, it is the most important thing that daddies are there. Mm-hmm. Most important. Boys especially too. They're both so important. But a girl gets her stability from her father first and seeks out that stability from a mate
her self-esteem
in the future.
It's proven. They've done all the studies. They
true.
Get their self-esteem. There's not a lot of OnlyFans ladies that have fathers in the home. We'll just say that.
Not a lot of criminals either.
And there's not a lot of men in prison that have a father in the home. Matter of fact, the outcomes are about equal if the children are raised by a single father.
We see a lot of the violence in our schools and around the country. Who are they usually caused by? They're usually caused by boys and men who don't have fathers that are active in their lives, or their fathers also have that criminal past. And I'm so glad my husband loves my son, and my dad loves me so much. Sometimes I'm like, Dad, you're too strict on me, but I am so grateful for it now because my dad helped me figure out the kind of man I wanted in my life, and
that's
man
it.
who would be the father to my son and my future children.
So it sounds so conservative, and faith plays a huge role. We've got a society that's gone away from faith, and there is something to it. There is something to the family unit, and that is something that communism and big government has tried to destroy, is the family unit. And you see what happens when stuff is better than people, when money is more important. And we've got a society now that lives off Instagram and looks at famous places to travel. And I've got to own the latest thing and then latest bag. What kind of man are you going to find if your number one goal in life is to get a Hermes bag that's $20,000?
A what?
A what bag?
A Hermes.
Oh, Hermes, like the Hermes bag, or
yeah.
They're how much, and what is this thing called?
A purse. What kind of man can date a woman like that, except for a man who's probably dating 50 women like that and has tons of discretionary income and probably doesn't have an investment in any of these women. It's not about the woman. It's not about what she's bringing. It's just about the warm body. And why would men seek out women who are like this in a world where there's so many women compared to men who are single, and it's women who have a clock ticking, and we have only till a certain age so we can even make children, and most of us don't even want to until we're way late into the game, and to find our person, and then to find a man who's got lots of prospects, especially rich men, tons of prospects. Why would they settle for the certain one unless she's got something? And even then, it's like we're living in a world where our culture's so back-asswards that we don't just look into it and say, our family is worth it. It's worth more than vacations. It's worth more than money. or anything money can buy, because you don't take it with you. And if you're lucky, you're not alone on your deathbed, because you're looking into your own eyes and your children and your spouse and that to me is what's the most important part of life. And I hate to have to be in my late 40s to try to explain that to young people, but that's what's lost. Life is our gift. Our children are our gift. And we are displacing the very source of who provides that gift, God and men, from a woman's perspective. So and women are doing the same to men, and we're downplaying their importance. And that has to stop. It has to stop. But it won't, not in a culture that's sick. And our culture is very sick.
And it's also sickening how, like, a lot of these companies right now are fine with what, like, basically they're paying women to travel to another state to get rid of their child, basically have an abortion. That's absolutely horrific in that regard, because it's like, oh, we can't afford to give you paid leave. And I think there's so many government barriers on paid leave and a lot of ways to help families be able to afford their lifestyle, because how expensive this world is. And it's like there are so many government barriers. There's always leading to one thing to another. As we said, we have a problem with the system at this point. It's like childcare is so expensive, because it's crazy how there's so many people right now. I know a lot of women want to be stay-at-home moms and take care of their kids. I love how society is slowly starting to shift that way. I see so many people just saying, like, oh, like, I'm tired of being a career woman. I want to have my own family, but they struggle to find someone to raise their own family with. But the world is so expensive. Sometimes you need to have both parents working outside the home, and childcare gets expensive. And people also end up getting abortions because they can't afford their own child. It's so tragic. It's that system that's absolutely broken, or it's intended as possible, because they want people to be reliant on the government at this point.
It's true. And for me and my husband, we always decided one of us will be home with the kid. It wasn't, hey, you're going to stay home or I'm going to stay home. One of us is going to stay home. Childcare is expensive. And in return, we had to sacrifice a lot of things that we were used to or that we loved. Hey, we're not going to have this. We're not going to have this because this is more important. And so leaving a job made more sense. And I stayed home, but he stayed home the first year. And then I stayed home and we made another child. And I remember people giving me a look of like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I'm being a stay-at-home mom was something I should be like, they felt sad for me that I stayed home with my kids. Childhood is 5 years that you're home with them before they're into school. And it goes by so quickly. I could give up 5 years like that if it meant the mornings that I had and the dancing around with baby and teaching them all these different things. And those moments to me were better than any job could ever provide. And I
Being a
would go without all day.
Mhm. Being a parent is a job. And when my husband was deployed, I've been freelance for the last, how do we say this, almost 2 years. But when my husband was deployed, I was working a lot less. I mean, granted, I figured out I ended up doing a whole lot more than I thought I would do. But my son just kept me going all the time. He was the reason I was still doing all the things I was doing and still being flexible. And I kind of did all the calculations on, I got 14 op-eds out this year. Then I did a lot of media interviews with a lot of people. Um, and I also was able to do a lot of, be a guest on a lot of these shows. I'm like, wow, I didn't realize how much I could do in a year, even when my husband is gone, but I still had my son with me. My son was around pretty much all of it, except the times I went to DC and my parents were watching him. I'm so glad they were helpful while my husband was deployed doing that, because I was able to still have my career and have my son, but in a very different capacity. I'm not making as much money as I would a full-time job, or if I was going full force with my freelance stuff. But, I was so much happier because I was more fulfilled with my career and my family, and I spent more time with my son.
Yeah. And your son spent time with your parents, which is also so important. A grandparent is so important. And who will love them more if not you, your parents?
Mhm.
And let's get to some of these comments, because we've got a lot of people chiming in and I love this, and we're almost out of time. I'm going to I hate to start from the beginning because it'll be off a little bit, but when we were talking about schools, DEI at the expense of our college students' education, that was Fred. He says he went to Applebee's during COVID, every other table not being used. Employees had masks wearing them under their noses. Think of the hearing impaired people. I mean, that would be horrible to be hearing impaired with that read lips. And he says America First should be our flagship moving forward. And Carrie
America First encompasses every single American. And as conservative and more conservatarian as I am, I think it's about the very essence of what our country is that we need to continue fighting for. That is what America First is.
We're it. We're the only country on earth that has the First Amendment. We're the only country on earth that has the Second Amendment. We're the only country on earth that has free mobility. We're the only country on earth that has the mobility through the different pay scales and all that. We are it, and we've got to fight to keep it. The
Absolutely.
progressives are trying to tear that down. They want us to be a feudal state to their, secular Lord and Savior, whatever, Karl Marx.
The
But
crazy is that we're America First, the other countries start to become more reliant on themselves. Like, we're helping other countries by helping ourselves. It's crazy how that works, because we don't need to send millions of dollars to help all these other countries.
It's putting your oxygen mask on first.
Yep.
Before helping others. And yet we've been putting oxygen masks on everybody else and not ourselves. We're dying.
Yeah,
which is the plan. Like, let's cripple us economy. Let's cripple our economy. Let's not use the resources we have. Let's throw all our financials to other countries who hate us, or let's go to war so that we can go back in and rebuild after. So we're making money both ways, coming and going. Not we as a society, but specific Americans in this country are doing it, and the government is doing it.
I have some colleagues who have family and friends in Russia, or I actually know people who are from Russia, Ukraine, and they say the money is hardly going to help the people.
What?
Not even their soldiers.
Do you know who's helping the actual Ukrainians? It's the churches, it's the communities and ministries that are coming together to actually help the people, not their government, and definitely not our money trying to help their government.
Oh, they're helping their government all get fat paychecks in Swiss bank accounts. So Fred says, stop man bashing. It's always been a huge mistake.
No,
that's something we could do.
He's not saying you guys are man bashing. And it is hard for a young man to approach a woman nowadays. I mean, how many times have you opened up one of your social media apps and a girl is on there at the gym saying, "Oh my gosh, he's looking at me," and things like that. I mean, it's been made complicated, but that's coming due. The men have been told to stay away from the young ladies for so long that now they're doing it. And then when a violent attack happens to a young lady on a bus, the men have been trained. If men are anything, they are trainable. And you've trained them to stay away. And so when someone is lit on fire or assaulted on mass transit, the men do what they are trained to do.
Or they step out of that mold and they do. Yeah.
Daniel Penny stood up to plate. He was punished for it. It's like, no, that man in any other time in history and before all this craziness, like, he would have been trained to actually go after that person. I mean, that's his training.
That's a patriot.
Well, you just let the average man do what they do, and that's what the average man would do. They're training men not to do that. He stepped out of that and went to the Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps trained him out of what society has trained him to be. The Marine Corps made him something different.
Men have been sissified these days.
Yes, they have. Yes, they have.
I am so glad I married a man. And I don't want to man bash anyone, but I talked about my friend. She's 30 and single. She wants to get married and have kids someday. And she said, there are a lot of these guys, they want to be pursued. They don't want to pursue you. It's like that's what society has taught us. The men just sit back and do nothing. What happened to our men? Men need to stand up for their families. Men need to stand up for other women, even if they're not married. It's like, what happened
It
to
sounds like you
chivalry?
need to just set up a barbecue with some of his fellow soldiers and your friend.
Society has beaten men down
Just-
so badly that it has sissified them. They've required nothing of them. And the ones who
They
have
require
dads
from them
that
still.
teach them how to be a man. And that's why I think dads are such a focal point in a child's life, a man's and a woman's. A mom and a dad that care about this child but are teaching them the very things, the basics, that you don't hit, that you stand up for someone in trouble, that it's gotten so that it's not popular. And Fred says, or Jeff says, hi Jeff, he says teachers grade in their own image, when we were talking about how a boy will turn in a project and the girl will get a better grade because hers was moving to the teacher.
They also did a study. A study came out. I read about it a couple weeks ago. They tested testosterone in male teachers, and that is the demographic of males that have the lowest testosterone are male teachers, first-year male teachers. They believe it's the lack of testosterone that teaches them to seek out that safety of being a teacher.
Crazy. I wish we had more men step up to be good teachers, because honestly, at this point, we need really good teachers. The system has created it in a way with forced teacher unionship. I mean, it's not as forced anymore, to make it a way that like these teachers can't be as creative. And teacher unions, I would say, have kind of done away with letting teachers be teachers, and they kind of focus more on what they should be forced to teach. So I would say
Political.
Well, I think public sector unions are stupid anyway. They need to do away with all public sector unions.
But I think
You
this
shouldn't
is
be able to
happening.
unionize against your fellow Americans.
Well, you also have this in college, right down to what these teachers who are trying to become teachers go through and the curriculum they're learning in college just to make the mark. And the people who decide whether they can be teachers or not. It's broken all the way up. I mean, it needs refinement all the way up from K through college, because this is by design. They're looking for specific people, and these people that will follow their curriculum and follow their plan, and social justice is written all over it, which divides us all and doesn't make us, I don't know, it doesn't let us unite together, because we'll be too powerful that way.
The teachers are just progressive priests.
Fred says we need to.
Oh, we do. There's a
Teachers
lot of good teachers.
Are amazing, and they're especially a good one.
But we have a faulty education system.
Exactly.
So you can be the best teacher. Yeah. I mean, you can be the best toilet flusher. If the toilet's broken, it's not going to send the poo away.
Okay, that's a nice one. Fred says we need to rediscover what real man is. They're capable of so much. If we put the focus on men being good dads, it will work itself out. That's a good point, Fred. Men won't step up to the plate if they get punished for their efforts. Another good point. Not just for children, women need stabilizing factor of a man in their life. And that is true. I don't sit up at night worrying about if we're going to eat tomorrow, because I've got a man that I count on, and he will make sure we do, even if he has to take 3 jobs to do it, because it's in his DNA to take care of his family. And that's what women should be looking for, because science tells us that's what we're looking for. And we've been defying science, that we've got to be the breadwinner. We've got to be the one providing. And I think that's great if that's what you want to be. Just know you got to put a place for your spouse in there somewhere if you want to create children. And most women do eventually. And I think a lot of women do, but they don't put that in their mindset. Their goal is focused on me until now I'm on the border. Now I need science to get me pregnant, and I want a partner in this. And I feel bad for women.
I'm glad I chose a career where I'm able to fight for what I believe in. It's really hard work. You're always working, but it gives you flexibility to take care of your family. And especially in the conservative movement, they are always all about families. Like, hey,
Yeah.
go take care of your family first if something is up. Even in DC, like working in the conservative movement, you are prioritizing your family. So I am so grateful for those opportunities I have had in the conservative movement. And now being a freelancer, I have that flexibility. Even as a reporter, I have flexibility in my life.
I
Well, I
love
got a
that. I
hot
love that for
question.
you. Especially, I like to hear that that's happening in the conservative
Yeah.
movement in DC. That makes me very happy.
I got a hot question. So AOC, she's the progressive flavor of the decade.
We know who she is.
So she's got that boyfriend of hers, or they just got married or whatever. Do you think if she had a kid, there's a chance that would adjust her chemical makeup in her body and make her lean more logical, like conservative?
Nancy Pelosi has kids.
Nancy Pelosi is a lizard. That doesn't count. But
Hillary Clinton has one.
Hillary Clinton is not just a lizard. She's the queen thereof. She's like the mother lizard. She hatched all the eggs. But do you think, I wonder if that would happen. I wonder, as a woman, do you have that chemical change? Because, I mean, it may not make AOC, pull her to the conservative side, but what if it made her more logical? And what if, I mean, AOC is not pro-war, but like I've kind of leaning towards, if I'm going to vote for a female politician, she has to have a child that's a son, because she has to have some skin in the game of starting World War III.
I agree. I became far more conservative once I had my son.
Because it's your sons that are on the line. Your son, my son, I was there when I had him fill out the draft notice. I remember when my dad had me do it. I had my girlfriend's boy do it. I'm there. I make sure they get that done because, one, it's the law. Try, if they want to pursue college, try doing that if you don't fill out selective service. But it's your son that's on the line, not your daughter, not yet. They may change that, but your son is on the line. And I'm kind of to a point, I'm not going to vote for a female politician unless she has a son, unless she has some skin in that game.
What's interesting, I think just in general, it's not just having like a son, but like having a child in general. I notice people just end up more conservative, or not just conservative, more logical in general. Of course, we're excluding people like Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton who are crazy in the first place. But among these young people, I've noticed like more people change their political views. Like I all of a sudden see these moms who want to be more natural. It's like, oh no, like the big food, the big farmer, they're more concerned about that than when they have kids. But when
It's
it comes
true.
to having fun, I'm already thinking about the education system, like where's my son going to go to school someday? And I'm also thinking about I want him to be able to have that kind of freedom when he plays, because play is absolutely important for my son, whether or not he's in school, because I just let him play, roam around and teach him, but I don't like make him learn something right away. Like I just go like, hey, you just play, because there's a lot of learning and play, and the education system, they're going to force you to just think a certain way instead of how to think and how to be you. So I'm going to think about those ways for education for me. And I noticed like moms, like especially they're starting to homeschool their kids more. It's like,
A
nope, I
lot
can't
more.
child, especially if I have a boy, be part of the school system. I want them to have fun. I want them to play. And that's how they're going to learn. Of course, they're going to have their regular academics, but it's a lot more flexible instead of what they're learning in school. Like I had a classmates. So I was one of these kids who took what's it called? These concentration medicines because I supposedly had ADHD, and it's like it made me was forced to sit there. I mean, I ended up kind of being the goody good kid throughout because my parents realized that wasn't really helping me. They found other things that helped me focus in school. It was through the arts and through music that helped me focus in school a whole lot better. But I also found that I need a lot of play. I need a lot of my energy. So I did a lot of sports as well. And all of a sudden, we need these families to be able to have their kids be able to be out and about. And I'm also thinking about my son one day when he does have to sign up for the draft, Lord forbid. I mean, maybe he will want to go military like my dad, and that's his choice, but no one should be forced to sign up for something like that. And it makes you think. It makes you think about what people are doing and how things are going to change in the future for them.
Well, imagine the people who are watching our current commander in chief and watching their children sign up for the military. I imagine there's a lot of moms who were just worried because we have a president who doesn't know if it's chocolate or Tuesday, and he's pushing the bear with a potential World War III, and they're going to use my child to go boots on the ground. And yet there are a lot of people, boys and girls, who have it in their DNA to serve.
Mhm.
And there is no one who's going to talk them out of it, nor should they. We need patriots. But
Mhm.
how terrifying from a mom's perspective to see the president act the way he's acting, and so flippant on what could be your child's life, your child at the gate in Afghanistan,
My
and this
husband
exit.
my husband was deployed in Syria this year. And with everything
Jeez.
going on in Syria right now, I'm so glad my husband's home right now because I don't know
It's a
what would
blessing.
happen to him right now if he were still in Syria. If he had 12-month deployment instead of a 9-month deployment, I would be on pins and needles because we have a commander in chief right now who does not know what he's doing when it comes to foreign policy. And granted, my foreign policy isn't the best, but what I know he's doing right now is not great for America and for the world.
I totally agree. Back to comments. Norma Allred says, bring back apprenticeships in the trades, have them open equal for all colors, genders, teach the young to do lots of different jobs. Absolutely. Carrie says, yes, but our elites want globalism. And I think she's referring to why all of this is
They want
is going
global
on.
feudalism.
Fred says, my 5th grade teacher, Mr. Goal, was real, strong role model of what a man should be.
Yeah, but let's remember your classmates was Moses. Noah was the
Don't be
year
mean to
before.
Fred.
Hey, don't worry. Moses was graduated the year before me. Me and Fred are right there
I'm
together.
older than you, so you need to zip your face.
So-
Jeff says, was a good lesson on how far government will go to use the situation to their benefit. I think he's referring to COVID, especially.
Mm.
We got to see behind the curtain of what the government would actually
Oh,
do
Let's
if
remember.
all Americans had to fall in lockstep to fear and what they could actually get done.
Let's remember they filled in the skate parks with sand in California. Remember the video of the police officer chasing the surfer
In Malibu.
up and down an empty beach. Not a human in sight. The only danger of COVID was if that police officer caught the surfer. And I laughed, but
They
it is
closed beaches
ridiculous.
in Florida. They closed them. And yet sunshine, fresh air,
Yeah.
all those things are supposed to be good if you're
They
sick.
closed down gyms. They closed down everything positive to fight COVID. They shut them down.
And churches. And for those of us who have faith, we pray for our families when they're going to close churches. I'm sorry. Amendment 1 is pretty clear.
Yeah.
Pretty
honestly,
clear.
Let's put it like this. The patriots of the late 1700s and the early 1800s would have taken up arms against their government over stuff like that.
Absolutely. I mean, they did it over a small percentage
whiskey
in tax. And yet look at what we're paying in taxes now.
Uh-huh.
Look at how much work we do to keep partial amounts of our own money.
Yeah, don't get me started.
And all of this hasn't made people revolt. And I'm not calling for revolution, but I think the closest thing we've ever seen to it was in November when they came out and voted for Trump. And I think that I still worry about Trump and his safety. I mean, 2 known assassination attempts. We don't know how many in total, but 2 known ones just in the past 6 months. We absolutely, as a people, need to realize this is bigger than Donald Trump, and we have to keep moving forward. If in fact he can't be there to lead, we have to move forward with the principles of America first, freedom first, and put our own oxygen mask on. And let's use the resources that are here in our country, and let's protect our country like every other nation in the world does. We're the only nation with open borders. Are you kidding? Like this, we used to be the nation of innovation, of freedom, the golden beacon that everyone wanted to come here for a better life. And yet people like Obama and other people said, oh no, we've got it too good. No one should have nothing and be happy. We should have to take us down a peg. Why? We're America.
Remember when Obama said he was going to turn us into a service economy populace?
Bless his
Oh my
heart.
God. Just imagine
Yes.
not being able to own your own car, own your own house, and own anything you have. I mean, the sharing economy is interesting because like you're able to rent your own home to other people, which I think is a really cool, innovative thing. But imagine that kind of being the reality for everyone, where
It
everyone
is the
just
reality now. You can't own your own car unless you pay the government to let you drive it on the streets. You don't own your own home. You could pay it off. Miss one payment to the IRS on that property tax. It's not yours anymore. We've gotten there. Now we have to stand up and be done with it. At least in our state, we got to be done with property tax. I don't know what you pay in Georgia, but if you don't pay it, you can own the home for 100 years, your farm for 100, 200 years. Taxes come due on it and you don't pay, now the government owns it.
So
it's ridiculous. It's kind of ridiculous when the government tries to seize your property because you can't pay those property taxes, even if you've owned it in your family for generations.
It's
and generations.
criminal.
It's horrible. I mean, the property tax here, it's not that bad compared to places like Texas or Utah. I would say that.
yeah, Texas is bad because of their freedom. Utah's bad because of their lack of freedom. Utah's bad, but we are a little bit over. But I wanted to ask you real quick. So you're in Augusta, Georgia. Are you at what used to be called Benning, am I assuming?
Benning. I've heard of Benning. So we're in Grovetown technically, which is just out
Grovetown?
of Augusta.
Okay. Isn't Augusta the city right there by Fort Benning, but now it's got a new name?
So Fort Benning, that's another base that's I think closer to Columbus. I can't remember
Okay.
what they changed it to. I can't think
Yeah,
of the name, but
doesn't
we're
matter.
Fort Gordon. So we're Fort Gordon, which was
Okay.
changed to Fort Eisenhower. Which honestly, I would say like we're changing the names because of political correctness reasons. Eisenhower, I wouldn't say was like a terrible name change, unlike some of these
No.
other. But at the same time, it's like, why do we have to change these names when all these other service members are just trying to focus on like having good housing or being able to serve in the
Yeah.
military?
Yeah, there's a couple other things we should concentrate on besides. Here's a message for all you progressives. Do you morons know they named all those bases after Southern generals as a poke in the eye to the Confederacy? Just throwing it out there. You
They
guys
don't know.
probably ought to recognize that.
Humor is lost.
But the Democrats, of course, they're going to always fight for.
Jeff Adamson, thanks for tuning in, Jeff, and Carrie and Fred and Norma.
Everyone.
I mean, Mom, all of you that are in watching, we really appreciate this. Jeff says rules for thee, but not for me. And that's absolute truth with our government. And Fred says those who push the COVID mandates didn't miss out on any of their cake eating events without masks.
Mhm.
I mean, the governor of California proved that.
Or what about the head of the teachers union in California who fought to close down the schools but kept his children in their private schools?
Private schools were open, yeah. Fred says, yes, communism wants to take property ownership away from us.
Yeah, of course. They put it propertyship in your rulers. That's all this. I want to ask you, I want to close out. What's your feeling on the politics there in greater Georgia and your local area?
Okay, so we are a swing state. Georgia's a swing state, but I am on the border between both Georgia and South Carolina. So I follow along with everything that's going on. Augusta area. So Augusta itself is pretty purple, but the whole area, it is very conservative and Republican. But people were fed up, especially after the death of Laken Riley here in Georgia, about how there wasn't enough being done to stop criminal illegal aliens from doing any harm, that they actually had to pass a bill here in Georgia to enforce certain laws, and it would get certain police sheriffs in trouble if they didn't report these criminal illegal aliens to ICE. South Carolina, they're dealing with their own things right now with going on with school choice and parental rights. And I think they have pro-life legislation going on this next session. Georgia, we're gearing up for the next session here. Augusta area, we have our own politics with school boards. The Columbia County, where I am, it's not Augusta proper, but it's a more conservative leaning area. If anything, we probably have one of the biggest GOPs out of the entire state. It's very pro-America first, and we try to be one of the stronger ones in the entire state. Then Richmond County, it is a little more purple, but you still got a whole bunch of people who have like the Trump signs and conservative signs out there. And even Democrats, I would say, are a little more sane here compared to the big cities.
That's good to hear. Georgia is, I mean, a swing state. You got Fannie Willis is down there. And what was that?
Georgia saved the day for
What was that lady
election
that ran for governor down there who fought forever saying that it was unfair?
Stacey Abrams. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
isn't she
Why?
a peach?
Yeah, you get some whack jobs out of Atlanta. Obviously, you're going to. But yeah, I love Georgia. Georgia is, I would go down there. My brother was
Beautiful.
at Hunter Army Airfield, and I would go down to visit, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a year while he was there. And I love Georgia. I love Northern Florida, South Carolina. It's just a beautiful area, and the people down there are great. We'll close out with some scary news, apparently. Norma says, this was awesome. She's saying you were awesome, and thank you for coming
Yes,
on,
Fred
Francis.
also says you're an amazing guest.
Yes. And then she follows up with, did you hear that pet food tested positive for avian flu? Wow.
Is that the new bird flu thing that's going
Yeah,
around?
that's the new scare tactic for everyone is bird flu.
Is it the avian flu, from what I understand, it's pretty heinous if humans can catch it, but it's very rare that humans catch it. It's not doesn't jump into the human species very easy. But
That doesn't stop them from terrifying you about it.
what it does do is it hurts our economy by destroying our poultry
Our food.
market.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Maybe
the government destroys our food and our farmers who grow it and has to get it from the outside source.
I'm scared to eat chicken now all of a sudden, but
I'll eat the heck out of chicken. You know what? Eat it while you can, because I mean, it's very rare for humans to catch avian flu. But then again, as I say that, it's very rare for humans to catch bat flu until, we pay for a lab to make bat flu catchable
Which
by
I saw.
humans.
I just saw a title. I only saw the heading in the news that they believe they've got proof that the FBI knew more about COVID than they actually said,
What?
and had an engagement in that.
Shocker. Oh, the FBI who
Heaven
pulled
forbid.
coverage for treason.
What if they said it on the world to disrupt an election?
Yeah, I'm
Because I know
telling
there's
you.
boards trying to figure that part out.
You know what?
They-
I'm not.
election year anymore this next year.
Yeah.
They're probably just going to try and dismantle the next administration as much as possible.
Oh gosh,
They're
I
going to
hope.
do everything.
I hope Kash Patel gets put in charge of the FBI and tears it apart.
At least blows it wide open,
Yeah.
because the FBI agents that work in the field are phenomenal people. I know they go into the FBI because they want to make a difference, but there are people in the upper echelon of the FBI that are dangerous, and they are part of the shadow government, if not the very doers of its cause.
Well, and they all come from the cathedral of progressivism, your colleges. All of them. You wonder why all of our government agencies are all progressive and woke, because they all went to that church, and that church is any of your colleges in the United States. Norma says the cat died. What?
From the
No, hold on.
pet food.
Not your cat.
This is how it starts, though. The press will
I hope
release
not.
this story.
Well, I know her cat, so
And then they'll tell you there's deaths. And then if you read down at the bottom, it'll say, but we haven't seen it affect
I'll
humans.
contact you on the outside of this, Norma.
Although we're going to go kill 1 million birds because this is infection. But they don't tell you at the very bottom, this isn't transferred to humans, but it could affect other birds. And it's very hard to know, and especially with diseases. And I think the press and the government ruined everybody with COVID, because you've got half the people right away won't believe a word the press says. It was their last ditch effort to give them any sense of reliability. And for the people who used to tune into the news, her cat's fine.
Okay, good.
For the people who would tune into the news for information, they've just stopped it. A lot of people. It was like the very last straw.
I would trust Mad Magazine before I trust CNN any day on anything.
I trust a regular podcast that I don't even know if the people know what they're talking about, and I'll seek that information out before I would watch some jackass on CNN tell me that I'm about to die from bird flu.
Yeah.
What's even crazy, as you mentioned, I mean, I mentioned this a little earlier about how people are seeking alternative sources of media like podcasts to get their news and information, because Lord knows the mainstream media is not going to be telling us that. And I try to be the bearer of someone who likes to report the truth within the mainstream kind of regular media, how that's performed with those conservative news outlets and even other news outlets. But at this point, the mainstream media is dying because people are tired of the information that is being sent out through those. And it's usually not accurate. I can pinpoint, as someone who is a journalist, I mean, I'm journalist, policy analyst, everything under the sun, I can pinpoint where they're trying to show their biases.
Oh, absolutely. And you can't tell, the regular person can't tell when you're watching a person's view of things, or you're watching real information just come out in truth, because it's so muggy now. If I'm going to watch Tucker Carlson, I expect him to give me truth, but I also expect him to give me his opinion of it. That's what I'm tuning in for, his opinion of what's going on. Same with people who watch CNN and these certain people on CNN. But the Tom Brokaws of the world, who are just there to tell you what's going on, let you come up with your own opinion, they're dead. They're gone.
Speaking of news media right now, you probably know this. You mentioned her earlier, Representative Birkeland. She's like probably one of the most conservative, and yet the media is going after her right now, saying, "Oh, she introduced and passed this anti-trans legislation." It's like, no, what she was doing is pushing for parental rights and pushing for girls to be protected in sports.
Absolutely.
That's what it is. And they're saying it's an anti-trans bill. It's like, you media are fake news, and anyone can spot that. I hope more people can learn how to distinguish fake news and real news at this point.
Kira is one of the most real people I've ever met. And she is so real politically, and she's a sportswoman, as you know. Her whole life is about sports before this, and she was the one person up on the Hill that was screaming to protect women. These bills were not about trans rights. They were endangering girls, and she's saying, protect our girls. We can work this out for kids who are trans. We can figure it out, but the locker room is sacred. Girls' privacy is sacred, just like a boy's privacy is sacred. We've got to protect our girls. I think the media is ridiculous. And there's who listens to the Tribune or Utah News either? I don't even know, because we don't have any real news sources here other than our local newspaper, the Transcript. They just tell you what's going on. They don't throw in these flavors of crap that the rest of the media is doing.
One of our other local news outlets, there was some story, it wasn't even political, and they completely got the story wrong about what is happening. And he reported on it, like, no, this is what actually happened. And I have a colleague here who can prove that this is what happened. It's related to the firefighter situation. So it's not even political, but even those little things, he can spot that kind of fake news. And it's an agenda. It's a political agenda, whether or not the news is political at that point.
Mm.
They're gonna make themselves obsolete, and they're gonna do it with their own mouths. They're gonna do it themselves. I mean, CNN's hurting. Even Fox is hurting. It's because they have lied to people too often, or they tell people too often who to vote for, or what to be mad at, what to be afraid of. And people are sick of it. They've got their own lives. that don't revolve around what this talking mouthpiece is telling me. And we're guilty. We're both talking mouthpieces for news a lot of times, but at least we lead with our bias.
At least I'm not a talking codpiece.
You want to know? I mean, you probably know this if you've been in a news studio. Those anchors, I'm not saying all of them are politically biased or leaning one way or another, because, you know, the news should be more neutral. They're
Should
reading
be.
from a transcript, they're reading from a teleprompter telling you the news, unless it's a breaking news situation.
Well, and here's another thing about those anchors. Where did they go? They went to one of those cathedrals of the progressive religion. And they came out as priests.
And to get hired, they had to bow down and kiss the ring.
It used to be a blue collar job. Now it's not. Now it's a job for little wealthlets.
Mm-hmm. This is why we need more Christians and conservatives in those local media. I mean, it's hard to get in. I mean, sometimes I'm like, maybe I should just go do local media instead of national media, because that's where we need our Christians and conservatives right now. But that media is dying. But as long as it's alive, maybe that's where a lot of us need to do well.
I say we need more local media. And that's not on local media.
I mean, that's what she just said.
That's on.
She should probably go work.
Yeah,
local.
but we need more local media, and that's on people starting to pay more attention to what's going on in their neighborhood that might matter, instead of, you know, yeah, Chicago was a crap show this last weekend. Surprise, surprise. The only thing that stopped it from topping 20 murders was it's super cold there too.
Well, I think you're following exactly. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. And I think that the impact you're having in this world is extraordinary. And if it's keeping your heart full, I love that for you. And I love it for your son and for your husband. I think it's an amazing meeting you. And this laundry list of amazing accomplishments you have are incredible. I hope you'll come on again and reach out to us if there's ever something you want to tell us about. The credibility, I think we've established tonight that you're super smart. You're well engaged in what's happening in policy and politics. And you even know Utah politics, which is really great. And hopefully you'll consider chiming in and giving us, you know, info if you ever want to share it. We would love to be a place that you can reach out to anytime.
Absolutely. And hey, if I'm ever in Utah, I hope to be able to reach out to you guys. I mean, I grew up in Draper. It's a bit of a drive. You're in Tooele, right?
It's only 330 miles out, but 30 miles back. It feels like we're that far, but we're literally 40 minutes from Draper.
Okay. That's not bad at all. I'd love to meet up with you guys at some point whenever I'm in town. I'm surprised that this year, this is my first year, I haven't been in Utah at all. So that's a first for my life right now. Hopefully I'll be back in Utah. I always stay close to Utah politics because that's where everything began for me.
Very good, everyone. Let's thank Frances for coming on. She's outstanding. And Frances, thank you so much. Have a good weekend. I hope everything goes well, goes safe. I hope your husband continues to have a safe career in the Army. You know, let's hope that the commander-in-chief doesn't get us into something we can't avoid.
Happy New Year, everybody. Next time we see you, it'll be 2025. And we're super grateful because we've done one full year of the show. And we're so grateful for all of you that are subscribed and are paying attention and tuning in and getting us on your podcast apps and on YouTube and Rumble and Facebook. And so we do this because we love this, and we couldn't do it without you. And we're so thankful for you tuning in
because she makes me,
and leaving your comments. And all of you are amazing. And that's why we get great guests like Frances who get to chime in.
And we got to thank Dave for linking us up.
Yeah.
David, me and David did the previous iteration of this show many moons ago. And I don't know where you met Dave at. He didn't make that
David
connection.
Weiss.
I feel
he's
like we
the
just
one-
met through just like our circles in Utah, because when you're in
Okay.
politics policy, you just meet people even if you never meet in person. And when you meet in person, you're kind of like, oh, I know you.
I know. That's the
It's
truth.
such a
Yeah.
simple word.
Well, and and Dave, I look forward to seeing you on January 20th in DC for all of that fun and excitement that's going to be.
It's going to be great to see our new president
I
sworn
hope
in.
so. I
Well,
hope so.
thank you, Francis. And
Yes, thank you so much. Everyone have a good night, good weekend. Humana, be safe, everything else.
we forgot to say if Head Trauma had a podcast, it
Oh.
would sound something like
Yeah,
this.
do you
That
remember?
was from a reporter
Do you
here in
remember
Utah.
Brian? He just got
Schott.
fired from Brian Schott. He was the
Yeah,
Tribune.
Brian Shaw, he was at the Tribune. I think he got fired. It seemed
Oh yeah,
like
he got fired. He's trying to
Yeah.
offer little girls pedo magazines or something. I don't know. But anyways, he's the one who gave us the if head trauma sounded
Him and
like
Dave.
a podcast, it'd sound like this.
That was his review for their podcast.
Yeah.
If Head Trauma had a podcast, it'd sound something like this. So when I jumped on, I'm like, I want to roll with that. So we're just going to, how do you feel about political head trauma?
Yeah.
Here we
Brian
are.
Shaw gave me a lot of trauma. I mean, I had some interactions with him when I was an intern in the Utah legislature. I didn't intern for a member, but I interned for different groups and the Attorney General's office. And he wasn't focused on getting the news out. He was focused on getting an agenda out there.
Absolutely.
His opinion, and he always likes to say, I'm a Republican.
No, he's not.
And I just like, did you ever notice when you're around him, it smelled like sulfur? Just throwing it out there.
Yes.
The horns were a
Yes.
giveaway for me, though.
Yes.
And he would
Yeah.
stand funny
He
way
was, I slipped on his slime one time.
Okay. Thank you, Norma. Thank you for tuning in.
Yes. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Francis, have a wonderful night. And we'll talk to you real soon.
Thank you.